Hi, my name is Justin Scheiner, and I'm an associate professor and viticulture specialist with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Today, I want to give you a few tips on how to pick out a wine that you like. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about the Texas wine industry. Most everyone has seen wineries popping up here and there, but a lot of people don't realize that Texas is the 5th leading wine producing state in the nation. We have about 700 wineries scattered across about half of our 254 counties in this state. So chances are you have a winery in your backyard. Likewise, we have vineyards all the way as far south as Brownsville, as far west as El Paso, as far north as Dalhart, and everywhere in between, making our grape and wine industry truly a statewide agriculture enterprise. So one of the reasons that is true and the Texas wine industry is growing so rapidly is that Texans are crazy about wine. And we in fact consume about 300 million bottles of wine every year. That's a huge number. And a lot of people have questions about how much wine should I consume or how much wine is it okay to consume? We've all heard the recommendation that moderate red wine consumption is good for heart health. But what does that mean? What is moderate? Well, normally that means 1 glass of red wine a day is good for heart health. Now, this is a wine glass, but that's not what we're talking about. But what about these wine glasses here? These are all 5-ounce servings of wine, and that's the recommendation. 1 4 to 5 ounce serving of red wine every day for heart health. And so you can't have a whole bottle on Saturday night and make up for the week. That's regular and moderate consumption. So a lot of people say, well, I don't need those extra calories, or how many calories are actually in a glass of wine? When we're talking about standard table wine like this, that is dry or it's not sweet, they're typically somewhere between 120 and about 140 calories per glass. Now, if you like sweeter wines, those are going to have higher calories. But the two sources of calories in wine are the alcohol and the sugar. So if you have a lower alcohol wine, which is usually on the label, you can check out the label and look at the alcohol content, that will offset a lot of those sweet wines. They tend to be often lower in alcohol content. So what about you carb counters out there? Well, the carbohydrates in wine, they come from sugars. So if you're counting carbs, go for those wines that are dry. So again, we're talking about a 4 to 5 ounce serving on a daily basis is the recommendation. So how do you find a wine that you like? Well, if you go to the grocery store, you see a breadth of wines of all sorts of different types, and it's hard to know which one to choose. What I tell people is a good rule of thumb is that the red wines that you see in the grocery store are typically going to be dry and not sweet, or the label will say so. So the word dry means not sweet. Now, what about white wines? Well, white wines can go either way. It really depends on the type of wine and often where it's from. So for example, Chardonnay, which is the most popular white wine, most of those wines are going to be dry or not sweet. Same is going to be true for something like Sauvignon Blanc, which is another really popular white wine. Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio, it can go either way, but most of those are going to be on the drier or less sweet side. Now, if you're really into sweet wines and you want to find something sweet, what I would recommend is look for something like a Moscato. Most of those are going to be sweet. You could also look for something like a Riesling wine. So some of those Riesling wines are going to be sweet, especially those from, say, places like Germany. But a lot of times you're going to have to look at the label to figure that out. What about pink wines? Pink wines have become very popular these days. We start to see pink wines popping up here and there on the shelf from all over the place. Well, pink wines can go either way. It really depends on where it's from and the type. The most common pink wine that we see is white Zinfandel. These wines are also called rosé wines or blush wines. White Zinfandel, 9 times out of 10 or maybe even more, is going to be sweet, whereas the others, you're going to have to dig around on the label to find that information. So I would encourage you to explore wine, and if you're interested in exploring Texas wine, you may have to get out there a little bit. Most of our wineries are small, and they don't have enough volume to necessarily sell through the grocery store. But I would encourage you to get out, explore Texas wine, use some of these tips to find wines that you like, and always drink responsibly. Thanks.